When the electric bass was brand new, it was a wild time and the future was unclear. Would upright players gravitate towards 4-string electric basses in droves? Would guitar players downsize from 6 strings to 4 strings to play electric bass? Maybe there was a third way, making an instrument that played more like a guitar, but that strings were tuned down an octave to be in the bass range and with a longer scale length. Now, at the time, most of these instruments were called baritone guitars. This can be confusing because it's not what we now know as a baritone guitar, which is a guitar tuned down to A or B standard, and it's also not a 6-string bass. As we know, a 6-string bass is basically your 4-string bass with a couple of extra strings. This is, in its own category, a completely different, unique instrument. So today we're going to play a few of this style of 6-string bass. We have instruments from Gibson, Fender, and Danelectro. And basically, the deal with these is that they're a bit longer scale length, and the strings are obviously a bit bigger than guitar strings, but smaller than bass strings. And the spacing between the strings allows for you to play a bit more like a guitar and kind of pull off guitar voicing chord shapes. So let's hear them, starting with this one in my hands right here, the Fender Bass VI. Man, so much vibe with this thing, so much. So the Fender Bass VI is probably the most well-known of these 6-string basses, and if you watched the recent Beatles Get Back documentary, you saw this thing featured all over it, which is probably why it's had this really nice resurgence. Fender Bass VI was released in 1961. This one here is at 62. It was envisioned by Leo Fender as a baritone guitar with an offset body and electronics and hardware similar to the Jazzmaster and the soon-to-be-released Jaguar. It was in production until 1966. It was discontinued then, and only 135 were made. There have been many reissues throughout the years, most recently the Vintera series, the 60s Bass VI, and the Squier Classic Vibe Bass VI. But you can find many reissues throughout the decades on Reverb. So I play bass, I play a fair amount of bass, and this feels like, you know, you have the command over it like a guitar, but with the sound and obviously in the range of a bass, which is a really cool combination and encourages you to play in different ways. For example, playing with fingers is going to be difficult just because of the spacing between the strings. It doesn't provide that kind of style for you. Playing with a pick, palm muted, feels like the way to go initially. You know, it feels like that's. Now, picked without being palm muted, especially if you dig in, it has kind of an undesirable clunkiness to it because of the tension of the strings. Whereas the palm muted thing is just really, it's like pinched right in there. I will say though, fingerstyle, if you're doing like more open voice stuff, works really well. This thing's really cool. I mean, it seems ridiculous to like play like high chords like this, but it sounds cool. What other bass do you know of with a trem bar that you can just play that minor, just play that D minor chord and trem away at it? Okay, so here we have the Gibson EB-6. In 1960, Gibson comes out with their 6-string bass 1 year before Fender, not as this SG model, but as a 335 body style. That didn't last very long. In 1962, it switched to the iconic double horn SG model, and this one here is in 1964. Gibson has never reissued these guitars, at least not yet. So if you look closely here, you can see these two mounting holes where there would have been a chrome palm rest. That's been removed, obviously. It's been lost to rock and roll and time and everything else. But because you wouldn't have been able to palm mute because of the palm rest there is an actual mute that you could activate here. It's disengaged on this model, which is a bummer. I would have loved to have played with that and to have heard that, but it's a really fascinating feature on these instruments for sure. I really like the neck pickup on this. Love those open voicing chords, those open voice chords on these instruments. Such a vibe, such a cool vibe. Tone roll-off on the bridge pickup is really interesting. Kind of has like a bit of a honk to it. Wow, that is a strange tone. For the neck. So, believe it or not, the first company to pioneer the 6-string bass was Danelectro with the UB2 in 1956, way ahead of the game. Danelectro's 6-string basses were probably some of the most widely recorded. They were central to the classic tic-tac sound of the 50s Nashville sound recordings, and they were used on many pop hits from the Beach Boys and many others as used by the Wrecking Crew. Unfortunately, we don't have a UB2 here, but is it unfortunate? Because look at this. Look at what we do have here, a 1966 Longhorn 4623. This is a piece of art. It is insanely awesome. The mid-century vibe is strong. Just these tuners, the texture on the sides is amazing. These on-off switches with the tone controls here, these like mid-century teardrop vibes here. I don't know what you'd call that, but those are amazing. Lipstick pickups, of course. This is so cool. It feels amazing too. What's awesome is that the first time anyone would have heard fuzz on a record was from a Danelectro 6-string bass and a broken transistor on the Marty Robbins record in 1961. Broken transistor in the console, and that sound was the birth of fuzz, and it was a Danelectro 6-string bass. Let's plug in a fuzz and go for it. And we simply could not resist because we have here a Danelectro 1965 double neck, guitar on top, 6-string bass on bottom. Look at this thing, just look at it. Feeling it gives you some sense of how would I ever use this in an application musically. Holding this guitar neck is honestly one of the strangest things I've ever done. Playing a guitar this high with the weight of this neck beneath you I can't describe the feeling. I really can't. It's like, what are you doing up there? Play me down here. So yeah, the 6-string bass, an experiment from the 1960s, or I guess the late 50s for Danelectro, which kind of remained a bit unknown, I feel, and it should be more known now. It should be more present. I'd like to see more of these things. I've been recording with one lately, and it's amazing. There's so many applications. The way that it encourages you to play is really awesome. The way that you can record them is really, it's vast, and they're super fun to play as well. They feel great. I'd like to see more of them. If you come across one, pick one up. I guarantee you'll have fun with it. Probably write something cool, record something cool. You can find them all over Reverb now. I'm happy to see some of these brands reissuing them. And yeah, let's play more 6-string basses, y'all.